Hey guys, what's up? MadSeason here, back with another video for you. Apologies for the voice, but I've been sick recently, so I'm just sort of stuck home with nothing to do. But I guess it's good timing because we've had quite a lot of news, I tell you what. So much information, it's kind of hard to know where to start, but along with the announcement of the release date and the beta, there have also been various interviews with huge bombs of news. It's caused quite a panic, some people are as elated as ever, and some have sworn off the game completely. That's right, Blob Shadows confirmed. On a serious note though, I took a few days to sort of mull over all of this stuff, and I wanted to share my thoughts with you here today. As I said, a lot of this stuff is from interviews, so everything I talk about will be sourced in the description if you'd like to check it out for yourself. I think we should start with the most major thing first, and that's layering. This is a new term as far as I'm aware, but basically it's server-wide sharding. I guess the main difference being sharding is just tied to zones, whereas layering is tied to the entire server. Of course, not to be confused with cross-server, where multiple servers are merged together, creating an oversaturation of the community. So you see the same people every day, but there's still another version of the world that contains other people, and of course resources and mobs, more on that in a bit. But as for why they're doing this, well, server stability mainly, and the overall launch experience of the game. They want to keep the servers running, and they want the leveling to proceed at a reasonable pace, so not everyone is sharing like 5 boars. And by layering, they can have fewer servers total, which will result in fewer dying slowly over time as the initial hype dies down. That's the mindset at least. As I've stated quite a few times, the community in the game is so crucial. I think it's one of the most important aspects, if not the most important aspect of the game, and you have to be so delicate with it. So naturally, when people hear anything about sharding, layering, cross-realm, and so on, they kind of get on the defensive really quickly. I'm kind of worried with this whole thing, but I do think that some people are blowing it out of proportion. They said that the maximum that they'd let layering go on for is Phase 1, and now people are going around saying that it's going to be active for all of Phase 1, which I think is jumping the gun. Ian Hazakostas has been on record saying that their goal is to have it up for the first few weeks, with each world matching the capacity of the population cap of the original game, and then, as people spread out, increase the amount of people per layer, and decrease the total amount of layers in the world, promising that within a few weeks they'll be back down to one single world. This is from an interview by Vanian, which I'll have linked in the description. They also said that it's not going to be a free-for-all per se, which I think should also be noted here. Guilds will be kept in the same layer, and they claimed that the first layer that you log into will generally be the layer that you stay in, so you'll still see the same players as you level, unless they consciously hop to a different layer. So, they're basically doing everything they can to keep the servers from blowing up, and at the same time mitigate the negative aspects that go along with all of the sharding and layering stuff. To me, it sounds like an overall improvement to the sharding that we were going to get. It sounds less intrusive to the community, and as long as they keep their promise, it'll only be a temporary thing. But that brings me to the obvious downside here. You of course have to be able to group with friends, right? So someone has to switch layers, and that's where shard hopping rears its ugly head. Or maybe it's called layer hopping now? I don't know. Regardless, you can hop to different layers to avoid PvP, or farm rare spawns, mining and herbing nodes, and so on. It's the typical stuff that you all know about by now. They did say that they know it needs to be gone by the time outdoor raid bosses come out, and that they're working their hardest to make sure that it isn't in for the opening of AQ40, but it does have some implications for the smaller things, like rare hunter pets, or the Rockdalar and Anathema/Benediction quests if it's in that long. They did say just a few weeks, but I think that's the most important era of the game, especially if you're talking about the economy. If people level quickly enough and layer hop and grab about 40,000 Black Lotus or so, they're set for the rest of the game, and trust me, entire guilds will make an effort to take advantage of this if they're given the opportunity. So I do think that people are overreacting a bit, but at the same time, there are others who act as if there's zero downsides. If it were me personally, I'd say maybe 1 week at the max to try and preserve that launch experience and not screw up the economy. By week 1, I imagine that the highest most people will be around level 40-ish, so you nip it before people start getting into that endgame stuff where it really matters. Before they get to the Black Lotus or Thorium Veins. and at the same time, a lot of that initial hype will have died down, and you now have a better idea of the population of the realm as a whole. I think that would be a better middle ground, and if that's too short, oh well. I just take that as one of the prices of picking a high population server. I mean, we're getting character creation 2 weeks before launch, so they should have the numbers available to players on what servers are the most populated, and from there, it's a conscious decision if you want to be in a crowded server or not, and deal with the possible repercussions. Sorry, I'm starting to lose my voice, as you can probably tell, but moving down the list here, we have the possibility for the recreation of other expansions, just like how they're doing with Classic. Now, they didn't say that they'll be rolling Classic into the Burning Crusade. Some people were confused by that, so I just thought I'd mention that. But they basically just said that, yeah, if there's enough interest, we're open to doing the same to expansions that we're doing for Classic, so that's another big question that they've addressed. It's a spark for those who prefer certain expansions, and I can't wait until they get to the peak of the game, which is of course Draenor. Some people have taken issue with this, citing that it would split up the community too much. Like, say the Burning Crusade launches, and now everyone on my server quit. Personally, I think that's thinking a bit far ahead. I mean, they basically just said that, yeah, we might be up for it, so I don't see much point in panicking over something that's potentially years away. Crossroom battlegrounds were confirmed for Phase 3, which is the release of those first 2 battlegrounds, Orson Gulch and Alterac Valley. Yes, Crossroom battlegrounds were a thing in vanilla. They just barely made it in patch 1.12 to address the lengthy queue times. Basically, a handful of servers each made up what they called battle groups, so it was a larger pool of players to fight with or against, and it was the first form of cross-realm to be seen in the game. It's been another point of contention if it'll be at release, or maybe they'll add it in later. Well, not release I guess, since there aren't any battlegrounds, but you know what I mean. With it being in Phase 3, it's essentially release. This I really don't mind as much as other people. I think the ideal solution would be to have just a good balance between the Horde and Alliance on each server, but how do you really control that without merging servers together? As for myself, and I know people are gonna hate me for this, but I always saw them as a necessary evil. I played the game back then, before they were added, and I was on Alliance Khadgar, and anyone in the same boat will tell you that our queue times were horrible. We outnumbered the Horde by so much that 2-hour queue times were common in fact. And it bled into the other systems as well. A lot of our Grand Marshals got in maybe like 6 battlegrounds a day, and the rest of it was just sitting around Ironforge and waiting. Remember, it's all relative to your faction. If no one can PvP, you could really get Grand Marshal by not really PvPing that much. PvPing against boredom is a funny way to think of it, I think. The bright side to this was that you often saw the same players, and you could form little rivalries here and there, but if you were on the overpopulated side, it was a nightmare. I'm not surprised that they're adding it at the release of the battlegrounds. I mentioned in another video that ever since we got the news of the 1.12 AV, we sort of have a feel of their scope and how closely they're emulating things. Do I really want it? Not really, but do I also want to wait 3 hours to get into a Warsong Gulch match? Well, not really. It is going to vary person to person though, of course. I personally think that it brings more good than bad, and at the end of the day, it's part of vanilla. I mean, it was in 1.12, so if you're going for that accurate recreation, what really can be done? The next one is actually huge news if it's true, but we have conflicting information, so I don't want to give it too much credit here, but it's the possibility of new content post Naxxramas and Phase 6. This was actually from an interview on the Den of Geek website. Specifically, this came from Patrick Dawson, who's the production director of Classic. Of course, as you know, the elephant in the room, so to speak, with Classic is stagnation. What happens after Naxxramas? What happens when you get the best gear and you've, quote, beaten the game, if there is such a thing for an MMO? He was asked if he would ever create new level 60 content, including brand new 40-man raids, if Classic is a huge success, and his answer is, quote, anything is on the table, and that this is a love letter to our fans, and if the fans have a desire for something, it would absolutely be considered. We're certainly not planning on doing that today, but if people want more, we can talk about that, and we'll cross that bridge when we get there. Now, I did say that this was conflicting information. Ian Hazakostas was asked the same question in a Games Reactor interview, and he said that the addition of new content is out of the question, since once altered, that would make the classic server something else entirely. So, one person says it's a possibility, the other says out of the question, and it sort of started a debate between the players. One side eagerly awaits new content, but what kind exactly? Does he really mean new raids? Or what about dungeons or battlegrounds? Crusade was originally planned to be released in vanilla, so maybe we could see the 40-man version of that place. Or possibly the Crusade crypts will finally see the light of day, or maybe the Mount Hyjal zone will be quested and populated. Remember, they did have that mysterious instance portal. And we also of course have the no changes crowd. This is the more zealot-like following that are set on the near-perfect recreation of the game as it was back from 04 to 07, and as it stands, it's all left to speculation. There's nothing really concrete here, since we're getting two different answers, but it's more than enough to spark some, discussion on the matter. Moving on here though, with the big announcement, we also got the release date, which is of course August 27th. Some have said that it's quite late, mostly those of you who are in school, because that's right when it starts up for a lot of you. I actually ran a poll on this, and this is how it turned out, with most people siding towards too late. My mindset is that, if it means that we get more feedback in, and we get a better end product, who am I to complain? We've waited like a decade, right? So what's another few months? Plus, it gives me more time to nail down a main character, which I still haven't done yet. And right along with the announcement, we got news of a beta. It is a closed beta, which a lot of people guessed. Blizzard always starts with closed, and then slowly over time, they invite more and more people until it's pretty much an open beta. Just real quick here, to sign up, go to your account page on blizzard.com and make sure that Warcraft and World of Warcraft Classic are checked. That last part is new, and I have a feeling that a lot of people are going to miss it. People are pretty angry that you have to have an active subscription for a chance to get in. This really doesn't affect me, as I still play the current game, but I think the anger is warranted. Not really for what's fair and what isn't, but my thoughts is that a lot of people who are clamoring for Classic don't really care for the current game, and thus aren't subscribed. Trust me, I've been running this channel for years, and people like me who enjoyed both versions for what they are like unicorns basically. So, a lot of these players who are locked out are the veterans who played the game during vanilla, and I think they still have valuable feedback for the game. Just because they aren't subscribed doesn't mean that they're invalidated, so they're sort of encumbering themselves, I think, because they're restricting their testing pool. The more people you have to choose from, the higher quality you have, and I think that putting it behind a paywall does more harm than good. Another big point I think is character reserving. Now, I think this is a good thing overall. Some people are mad that you have to be subscribed to do it, and it's like 2 weeks before, but I don't mind that. I mean, you're gonna play the game, right? So you need a subscription anyways. Putting that aside though, I think this is good not only for those who want to be a bit more organized by locking in with their guild and getting their names and such, but it also provides some valuable data. Blizzard can get some figures on Alliance and Horde per server, and perhaps use these numbers to their advantage. I mentioned earlier that maybe Crossroom battlegrounds could be avoided if they use this as a balancing feature. Like maybe say that there's way more Horde on server X, so whenever someone tries to reserve their character and they make a Horde, they get a message saying that, hey, there's already a ton of Horde here. I know that they suck, and they need more numbers in general compared to the superior Alliance, but just know what you're getting into. It wouldn't lock anyone out, it would just give a warning pretty much. I think doing this in the 2 weeks before launch gives players time to sort themselves out, and maybe say that, okay, well, we'll roll on this server instead, because the Horde are outnumbered over here. Now, will they do any of that? I don't know, but I think it would be smart, and I don't see any downsides to this reservation system as a whole, unless I'm just missing something obvious here. And they also confirmed no World of Warcraft tokens. I didn't even know that this was on the table or where this came from, but apparently some people thought that they were bringing in the World of Warcraft tokens at some point, but that's confirmed now to be out, so no worries there. And one last thing before I sign off here is that right-click player reporting, which has been another point of contention since it wasn't in the original game. As far as I understand, people fear that they can have a guild mass right-click player report someone to auto-mute them in chat, or even suspend them, but they confirmed that there will be a human element to it, so from what I gather, it would be pretty unlikely for people to get timed out unjustly. So, like I said, lots to think about. I'm still processing a lot of it myself. This might be the biggest information bomb in the history of the game. I hope that this video maybe cleared up some misconceptions, and hopefully I didn't spot any new ones here. Good luck to those of you who are waiting for a beta invite if testing is your thing. I did have another video planned today, but with all of this news, I actually have to change a lot of stuff with it, so I've suffered some setbacks with that. I'll try my best to have it out for you soon though. As always, I hope you found the video helpful, like it if you liked it, and I'll see you in the next one, where I hopefully don't sound like I'm going through puberty. Peace.
Farewell for now, mortals. We hope you enjoyed today's video. See you again soon.